Hello and welcome to P Guru's channel. I am your host Sree Iyer. I am here with Professor R. Vaidyanathan of IIM Bangalore. So Professor, I would like to get your views on the recent direction in which the Trump administration is moving. In the past, we have talked about the wall that was being considered across the border with Mexico. And how do you see this thing play out? Is the wall, even assuming that it gets funded, there are some other challenges with that. And what do you see is the general direction in which the U.S. economy is headed?
I think we have discussed this earlier also. You see, the wall is it's an idea. It's not really the physical wall which is important. It's the idea of the wall. In the sense, there is a need to curtail illegal immigration from the southern part of US into US.
Right.
Is has to be stressed, has to be told, and for instance, now undocumented aliens, many people feel it's okay. So that complacency, I think, is trying to overcome.
Right.
So to that extent, I don't think he is going to really build a wall, because I think you also know about that famous river in California,
Rio Grande.
Rio Grande, where it's not easy to build a wall across river. So you tend to build it farther away or something.
Right.
Then on the other side, there is a huge ghetto or huge slums developing.
Right.
Anyhow, those issues are there. More important, I think, is he wants to enunciate the issue that the illegal migration is something which we should not be accepting.
Right.
That, I think, to a large extent he has succeeded, and including those city councils and others where these are mostly present.
Right.
Much of it is actually California centric and Boston centric, what you may loosely call the blue people.
Right.
So that is the. But I think his idea has got now into the center stage, because one of the estimates I remember, something like 15% of the US GDP comes out of these illegal immigrants, because most of them get into jobs which are brown collar and cash driven, and also which is cost effective for the employer, and they also keep them because that will give them a handle. Since you are illegal, so they will bully you, or they will ask you to do things. Instead of say something like if 7 hour is the working norm, they will say 8 hour you put in. You can't say no, because they know that you are. So all these are like H1B, same problem comes. Many a time people don't want to leave the job because you have to get another job within a fixed period of time if you want to continue. So in a sense, it makes you a sort of a bonded employee. So the idea of illegal, I think he is trying to. Not only that, I think you are aware of it, sir, that in many states, the so-called undocumented, they get these health benefits, they get these driving licenses.
That's right.
They are sort of semi-legal type of a position they have been brought into.
Yeah.
So that's a very, very unfortunate thing as far as the US as a country is concerned.
Yeah, it has also affected the country in many ways. For instance, people, when they're growing up, when your child is like 10 or 11 years old, you would normally have the child do odd jobs around the house. Mow the lawn, and babysit your younger sibling and so on. Some of those things are being taken away by immigrants because that's one. The other one is the summer jobs. Summer jobs now, it's almost non-existent. High school kids don't get those summer job opportunities that they used to get.
That used to be a very large scale activity. Wow.
So what has, well, the two reasons why it has happened. One was that kids themselves now are on a year-round study program. In summer, they have summer program classes because everybody wants to get take a shot at Harvard and some of the Ivy League schools, and therefore that requires a much more demanding preparation for that. So it's not at all uncommon, especially in high achieving school districts, especially in California, for kids to do their courses in summer, what they are going to repeat in fall.
Oh, okay.
So essentially their grade is a double read of the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, and it, while it might make them look good in terms of academic accomplishments, it doesn't really show what happens when you take them out of their comfort zone and then say, now here, let me see how you react to this. But the sheer volume of data that is coming across now is forcing many companies and schools, hiring entities to sort of quantify you. And when you quantify someone, the first thing that comes in is which school did you go to?
Okay, right.
And then what GPA did you get? Okay, so this is again what you talked about as gaming system.
Yeah.
So people are beginning to game the system.
Okay.
And it is, recently there was a study that showed that some of the blue chip companies in the valley like Facebook, Google, Apple, they all tend to hire the same set of high achieving kids.
Oh, okay.
And outside of that, people really don't have much of a hope.
Okay.
So there's other disturbances happening of this kind. Now, when Trump talks about being nationalistic and being American and so on, he wants to now build infrastructure.
Yeah.
And for that, he needs to go get funding.
Yeah.
And how is he going to do that? What are your thoughts on how he's going to fund the infrastructure projects?
See, this one point I think you will also agree with me. US requires a huge amount of infrastructure on two counts. One is I think a lot of the existing infrastructure really requires upgradation.
Right.
In a place like US, I have seen in many places these what are called expressways or equivalent of our national highways. The roads having potholes and other things, unimaginable. I wouldn't have even imagined about it in the 80s and 90s.
Right.
Now I think the second Eisenhower activity has to take place because he's the one who is credited with doing this.
That is like 60 years old now, so he need to redo that.
Then bridges,
right.
Then more airports, more places, required. So that is one dimension.
Right.
Second dimension is this will also create a huge amount of employment opportunities.
Correct.
See, one of the major challenge which Trump has undertaken is to increase the employment potential.
Right.
So these are the two things. As far as the financing of it is concerned, I think he would be able to issue bonds, domestic as well as international. Now, international, again, there are, a lot of people are telling, why would the Chinese, why would the Japanese, why would the so Saudi Arabians and others invest.
Right.
But as I always maintain, you see, these countries, the well-being of US is equally important for these countries compared to US itself. Because
is it the principle of if I owe $1 million to the bank,
correct.
The bank owns me.
Yeah.
But if I owe $100 million to the bank,
then the bank is more worried. I always say, if I borrow 60 lakh to buy a house, I will be monthly worried about EMIs.
Right.
I will discuss with my wife another thing. If I borrow 600 crore, then the banker will ring up my wife and ask how is professor, how is his health and other thing. So same way, see these, there are estimates which say as high as 55 to 60% of US dollar currency is outside US.
Possible, yeah.
Not in US. So what they have done is they have stuffed the whole world with their denomination, and they have also funded huge amount. Like the old joke goes, the Chinese exported toxic toys to US,
right.
and US in turn gave the toxic bonds to the Chinese. You hold all these things with you. So now they can't do anything about it. So any depreciation in dollar, these countries are equally worried. More than that, what you can call that federal system or something. So what I want to stress is ultimately many of these countries will be forthcoming. One is, let's be very clear. The infrastructure investment in US is not, would yield a good amount of returns. That is one possibility because their pay and use, ideas are very much common.
Right.
There is no resistance for it. Even a simple thing like, as you are aware, many of the municipalities issue bonds to say for instance create, they are known as munis, to create parks.
Right.
And people pay to use the parks, the facilities and other things.
Right.
So the paying for facilities and usage is not something uncommon in US.
Right.
So to that extent, there is a certain amount of revenue stream, cash flow stream will come out of those infrastructure things. Other point is, something like 17, 18 trillion US dollar of pension fund is floating around, trying to get some good location.
Right.
Now today, you may be surprised, sir, funds are in search of markets. Markets are not in search of funds. There is a lot of funds, but where to invest them? Of course, you see Europe is having its own difficulties. We saw that in another discussion.
Right.
Then the Middle East, one of the traditional attractive investment areas, is facing huge amount of crisis. One is the political instability and lot of these skirmishes, wars and other. Other is economic thing. Yesterday I was reading somewhere this Bahrain, so many number of Indians are getting out of jobs. There is a slowdown which has taken place. And China itself is not anymore. At one point of time, 90% of the global what do you call building construction, these cranes used to be located in China. Not anymore. So there is a, the funds are in search of good markets. So if US could offer an infrastructure facility as one of the attractive proposition, I'm sure large number of these pension fund will jump into that. So they are not going to keep away from it or something. And because many of the infrastructure is ideal for asset liability, ALM, what is called asset liability management of this pension fund. Because the pension funds also have 10 to 15 year maturity for the middle money and the people who are in their 40s and other. And some of the infrastructure project could also take 10 to 12 years to what you call yield fully.
But the bond yields tend to be quite low though. Do you think?
Currently.
Right.
Yeah, it will be low. But you see, the point is, even though it is categorized as low, it would be considered as much more sure bet in terms of investment compared to equity. Because there is quite a lot of uncertainty in the markets. Huge amount of it. Whenever there is uncertainty, there is a tendency to move towards metals or real estate or these type of things, as well as bonds. Not so this is something which I think is bet on infrastructure would yield fruits according to me. And it's a good idea in the sense, after all, they require also, it's not something ornamental or garnishing or anything. They genuinely require huge amount of infrastructure. Many places bridges have to be reconstructed, and as you rightly told, it's a 60-year cycle, just coming to an end or something.
Going to the next step, he has appointed another Goldman Sachs official as the Treasury Secretary. Now, if you go back and cast a look at the Treasury Secretaries that the American presidents have appointed, it doesn't matter whether you are a Democrat or a Republican. You could also be an independent, but the Treasury Secretary always comes from the same place, whose name we shall not take, because it's like the whole world knows it. So, Professor, why is this so?
You see, I think we should also recognize there are institutions like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and several other institutions which are very old and established in US. What you may loosely call, these are not pro-government or anti-government. These are government actually. So they are the ones who have been, whether it is Republican or Democrat, they have got a certain amount of network built across categories,
across
in
the
terms
aisle.
of Pentagon, across the aisle one, across also all type of thing. And they also have much more, they are clued into global development, and they provide a lot of strategic thinking in terms of future and other thing. That is one thing. So this musical chair thing is not uncommon. So it is, like they have a huge set of resource people actually who are reasonably knowledgeable, and most important for them is they don't upset any apple cart. Right? They try to sort of what you may loosely call put bandage and band-aid and then carry it forward. They don't try to uproot the whole thing or something. And so from that point of view, this they are liked bipartisan, in the sense both the groups prefer them, like them, and they have built a network. For instance, I think the other day you were mentioning about this this Exxon person coming into
Rex Tillerson,
as a budget. See, because they have run a tight ship, whatever said and done. They are known for their cost effectiveness,
Right.
and a very very good budgeting type of thing.
Right. Right.
And now I think US genuinely requires to have a more
Control on
stricter.
its expenses,
And
spend right.
like Reagan used to say that government is not a solution, government is the problem.
Right,
He says, remember that. But unfortunately, Reagan didn't succeed so much.
Right.
But I think Trump is very, very clear. He wants to sort of downsize
Right.
the activities. He has already cut the budget actually. He may not cut it for defense or science establishment.
Right.
But he feels that there is a huge amount of wastage.
Right.
I
right.
think I can mention one fascinating. Once I went for a Senate hearing committee in the
Washington DC.
with one of my colleague. It's one of those, I think, something connected with this airline industry or something. Before we entered the room, up to my chest, these papers were kept there, connected with the hearing. Actually, inside some people were sleeping and some people were, and that is why I always jokingly say it is hearing committee and not listening committee. So the point is, so much papers on all the items. 301 item, 302 questions, answers, and I don't know. My colleague told, don't even lift it because we came by flight and we are going back. We may be charged heavily for. The point is, so much. It's one area, stationery. In spite of all the technological advancement and other things, they could have still given some 3-4 USBs to us.
Right.
Anyhow, so point is, there is a huge amount of wastage in US. Not just in terms of these products and processes, even human. Many of the departments are bloated. So people join as a research trainee or something like that, and slowly, as in every system, I think you will agree with me. You know somebody, and
Correct.
like slowly you get absorbed into the system.
Right.
So I think there is a good amount of sloth in the US system. This I think many recognize, but many do not know how to tackle this.
Right.
I think Trump is very, very serious about it in terms of cost reduction, cost control, and in that point only. Other thing you were mentioning, if I remember, Dodd-Frank, right?
Right.
You can guess.
Dodd-Frank Act.
Yeah.
So now the House is Republican, Senate is also Republican controlled, and so is the president. So you have like all three planets have stars have lined up.
Right. It's a triangle.
Triangle. Now, one of the things that the banks don't like is that Dodd-Frank requires them to keep reserves, which in their opinion is way too high.
Yeah.
Now, do you see that getting diluted to a point where banks start becoming more again like Wild West gunslingers?
No, not. I don't think. You see, in US system, when certain new regulations and laws and other things come into being, after a lot of debate, discussion and other thing, and I'm sure you would know, even if there are 10 congressmen inside, very, very, very serious debate take place, and every sentence, every word and other thing.
Right.
Second is, I always maintain between Republican and Democrat, there is what I call, there is a Democratic Republican and there is a Republican Democrat. This is something which we have to recognize. And this group, there are Democrat, like your Bernie Sanders. Nobody will touch him.
Elizabeth Warren.
Similarly, there are Republicans.
Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz, and nobody will go near them, except before the poll. Election time, these people are useful because they can whip up their constituency and make people come and stand in the auditorium with a placard, I am for Bernie and other things.
Right.
Because unless you have to motivate them.
Right.
Otherwise, after the poll and other thing, these people are all kept aside. So this middle group, what I call Republican, Democrat, Republican, they are the ones who run the system. If you may loosely call it, and they don't want to upset too much any of these. And whenever there is a huge amount of deviation, like in 2008, out of that this whole idea of Dodd-Frank and other things. So whenever there is a significant deviation, they try to bring in certain regulatory framework and other thing, and it is not very easy to reverse it. It's nothing to do with Republican or Democrat. It's much to do with a certain amount of sobriety and certain amount of public policy. So I don't think the bankers can again go back to the gunslinging era and everything. That's not going to happen.
Mm.
What might happen is some amount of moderate dilution might take place
I see.
to
I
facilitate them. That's all. They are not going to significantly alter. So the American system, I think you will agree with me, a large group of what you may loosely call elites, they run the show.
Right.
Whether it is Congress, whether it is Pentagon, whether it is Foggy Bottom, anywhere.
Right.
This is what is a large group.
Right.
And only thing what Trump has done is he has come through an insurrection actually, where all the 10th class failed people and
decided that they'll go and vote.
they all what is called the lowest common denominator.
Right.
They are the ones who have elected him. And as I always maintain, you also I think will agree with me. US is not California and Boston.
Yes.
It is a huge central place. Your North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Wyoming,
Right.
all these places there are enough whites who feel that they are not getting adequately recognized, and they also genuinely feel their country is getting lost.
Right.
Because of this illegal migration,
Right.
employment issues. Everybody is bullying them. UN is bullying them. So like that, I am very fascinated that US is having a sense of victimhood actually. US citizens everybody else in the world should have a sense of victimhood. But US itself is having a sense of victimhood. That is what actually Trump he exploited actually.
Yes,
he
did.
used that actually.
He did.
But you won't expect any major significant alteration of some of these regulatory framework and other things.
So to add to that point, so one of the things that he has he's already signed off on this one, which was that all the restrictions laid on the Keystone pipeline have been lifted.
Yeah.
Which means the shale can now be brought through the city, the country's lands, and that essentially is going to again hold the price of crude down even further. I mean, it might come to a point where US is probably going to be the one arbitrating the price of global crude. Now, let's just take that scenario. Today, the crude is at $48 to a barrel. And I think I've read somewhere that it costs $7 a barrel for Saudi Arabia to extract from the ground. And it's
$7 to $8,
not
more than that.
And for the United States, like the shale technology, it was at 40 before. I think they've brought it down to 30 now. So essentially, it's going to stay within that band, 30 to 50 maybe. It won't go beyond much farther than that. So my question to you is: so assuming that this kind of a quasi-equilibrium is going to stay for some time, because you have to remember the OPEC has this unity, but that's sort of like an elastic band. It changes all the time. Each one fudges about their numbers and they produce more. So that actually puts more pressure on the price of crude.
Right.
Now, which means looking for India, its price of crude is guaranteed to be fairly low for the next few years.
Correct.
Right? But what we see is that the government is not passing on the savings and the purchase of crude to the public. It has the cost of a liter of petrol has been more or less 60 for a long time, right? So why is this government pursuing this policy of keeping the retail price more or less fixed?
You see, from our point of view, see, the government perceives that people by and large have accepted this 65 to 80, that range, 75, So why, And another thing is, when you bring it down, they are not very sure whether they can take it up again. One. Second is, see the fiscal deficit at 3%, 3.1%.
Right.
The government is actually huge amount of money is getting impounded in this fashion. So see, they have got lot of money by taxes on this black money, for instance.
Right.
Something like 50%. Even if it is 1 lakh crore approximately,
right.
50,000 crores.
Right.
It's a very huge amount.
Right.
So on all sides they are trying to take the benefit, not pass it on to the user.
Right.
Because still we have not come to a situation where the oil price is really related to the market. In the sense, when it goes up, because still the government
plays a role. It cannot move with the markets. You are not sure of that.
And as far as the US is concerned, if I recall correctly, in the last, I think, few years, US is more or less self-sufficient in oil. That
Yes.
is, something is happening.
Yes.
Which itself is a very major,
True.
because they are one of the huge consumer of oil. And the modern technology of this fraction.
Right.
Fracking has
made
helped
a
them
difference. It has
quite
made
a lot.
difference.
It has altered the.
Yes.
The point I want to stress is, it will not be very easy to sort of, I won't use the word bully or even think of doing any harm to US in terms of oil prices anymore.
Correct.
They won't care.
Correct.
They
So
won't care
the 73-74 oil embargo that
That is
OPEC
all,
initiated is a thing of the past.
Very much.
Right.
Second is, the ability of Saudi Arabia vis-a-vis US
Right.
is also coming down.
That is right. Well, actually, that has a good.
From our point of view, it is a very good thing.
Yes.
To the extent, for instance, US has allowed the Congress, of course, it's in the court, to make people
Sue for
Saudi Arabia.
9/11 victims.
9/11 thing, which
Correct,
if
right.
it is finally comes through,
Right.
Saudis
Right.
will go bonker actually.
Correct.
Because some 1,000 class action suits will go in everywhere.
Right.
Very
right.
small circuit court of US.
Right.
Anyhow, what I want to stress is, as far as oil is concerned, I think US is clear now that is no more going to be a big issue.
Right.
Plus, I think you also know they have huge amount of reserves.
Correct.
Untapped.
It was a policy of the United States
Correct.
to not use its own supply
Correct.
until the world is completely depleted of its supplies, and then
Good
start ruling the world with its own supplies.
Very correct.
That
Very
is true.
correct.
That
You are
is true.
absolutely true.
Right.
Right.
Now, I'm sorry, I have one last observation along the same lines. Now, if these lawsuits that we think will happen, that actually may be a good thing, because fully 5% of America's GDP is its lawyers. And right now, the legal profession is really hurting. So just to keep them occupied,
That's a good point.
there will be a lobby for that. They might just be dusting off their coats and then say, okay, let's go after these guys.
Correct. That's a very interesting point, actually.
Yeah. So, but in the global dynamics, Obama had to make some conciliatory noises when he visited Saudi Arabia, because this was happening right around the time he was visiting Saudi Arabia.
Very correct.
And they said, well, he had to do some dance, song and dance, right? But let's realistically go back and see this. Say the U.S. courts start ruling against the Saudis, right? But the Saudis are not citizens of the United States.
Yeah.
So they're not rule bound to say, okay, I have to pay $1 billion, and they'll say, no, I won't pay.
Yeah.
So what happens in this kind of? Does this have to go to the International Court in Hague in case?
No, there is also, of course, US is a huge gorilla. That I think we have to first recognize. US is not just a small monkey. If it wants, it can hit. Like UBS.
Right.
Number 2 and number 3, they arrested actually.
Right.
And that is not even IRS, their Department of Justice, which is very.
Right.
So what could, I'm just telling, one possibility is they can come down heavily and freeze the assets of Saudi in
Saudis, yes.
which they have done for Iran, and
that is correct.
Saudi will make a huge hue and cry another.
Right.
But let's be very clear, today the position of Saudi is very weak actually. It's not very strong or something. See, they have got war on their border actually with Yemen. They are spending a lot of money and effort which is not coming out properly.
This is more of a Sunni-Shia conflict, right?
Part of that.
Okay.
But Saudi is not able to fully control that actually. They have sent their army and idiotically, or I don't know what is the word to use, they are Pakistan is telling, we will come and help you to protect your kingdom of all the.
So they're outsourcing or willing to outsource their troops.
And in which case they have to pay, of course, Pakistan.
Of course, yeah.
Then Pakistanis will go and die. How does it matter?
Right.
For every soldier, they will give so much money.
Right.
The point is, Saudi is not the Saudi of the 80s or Saudi of the. They are in very relatively weak position actually. That is why they are trying to have some links developed with other countries in Southeast Asia and other things. They are becoming.
Do you see a drop in Saudi funding in terms of like all these Wahhabi causes, madrasas across?
Definitely.
It's come down.
Yes.
So
particularly, see, not many people realize the Trump presidency is altering the global situation.
I see.
It's not like the olden time, like it's all right. For instance, he has never talked about good terrorist and bad terrorist.
Right, he just says terrorist.
For him, just terrorist.
Right.
Everybody is a terrorist.
Right.
If I am not, if you are not with me, you are against me. He is very clear about it.
Right.
And so the US, it won't happen immediately in the next few weeks, but over a time period, they will tighten the screw on all these areas of funding, which is taking place, which is either subtly or otherwise. For instance, the noise from Pakistan will substantially come down, right? So the Trump presidency from that angle is going to alter the situation, including the changing situation in Europe. Even UK, you wait and see, because of after all this terror attack and other thing, it will slowly change its tune. This is what is going to happen.
So speaking of UK, we'll just finish up this thing.
Yeah.
So in UK, the population of Indian British, which is inclusive of Hindus and Sikhs, and everybody who has been born in what is today India, I think it's approximately 1 million people or 2%.
Maybe,
2%.
Correct.
In your opinion, what is the percentage of population of the Islamic, from Islamic countries? It could be all of Middle East and so on.
Oh, Islamic countries could be, Islam followers could be, something like 8%.
8% of the population. I see.
Because number of people from Caribbean island.
Right. But they are not Islamic though.
No, they have been converted into Islamic.
This happened inside United Kingdom?
Inside United Kingdom.
Oh
United Kingdom, the fastest growing religion is Islam actually. In terms of, and another very interesting thing is last year, more than 50% of the births are to non-whites.
I see.
And substantial number of them is to Islamists.
I see. I see.
And there is a report telling the most, the repeated and popular name is Muhammad.
Muhammad, correct.
So it's a very, if you look ahead, say, like that Turkey president went and told in Europe that the Muslims in Europe should have 5 children, another thing. So he says in another 20 years we can conquer Europe. So this is a new way of, in the olden time there was supposed to be a statement by one of the muftis of the Al-Arab mosque, that the future of Islam is in the womb of the women of Islam.
Right.
So that used to be quoted often. But see, this is a matter, because unfortunately the reproductive rate of whites is very, very low. It's not even 2.5 or 2.1 or anything. It's sometimes less than 1 also. Right. So that is something which is to think about.
No, but they're not even getting married, so there's a question of having a family,
correct.
right? So that's the other dynamic in place.
But one thing could change, as I call the third dimension of the problem. The earlier people used to have marriage and then have sex.
Right.
Then people had sex without marriage.
Right.
Now there is a possibility you don't have to have sex to have children.
Right. Reproductive fertilization kind of thing. Yeah.
So no, in terms of the stem cell research and other things.
Right.
So it maybe, I'm not telling it will. It may be possible. Lot of whites begin to have lot of children without marrying and sex. That is one possibility, right?
Yeah.
So anyhow, that is, we have to leave it to science and future.
Right. Well, thank you, Professor. It was very nice talking to you, and we will again meet and talk about other topics.
Sure. When you are back in US, and convey our sincere wishes to Donald Trump.
And I will. Thank you.